When the Nintendo Switch came out, I was 14 years old. My parents were against the idea of buying me one because they hated any kind of fun when it involves looking at a screen, so I waited until my 15th birthday and bought one myself, along with a game called The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. When I tell you that for the next month I lived and breathed this game for every hour of my life, I am understating it. When I was at school, I thought about the game. When I was out with my friends, I thought about this game. I even remember dreaming about this game once. It consumed me to the point where my parents were concerned that I would be running into a video game addiction if I kept playing.
Haha, joke's on them. I wasn't addicted back then. I'm addicted now.
But there was a problem with this game too. After putting about 120 hours in it, there was nothing really left to do for me. I definitely wasn't going to collect all the Korok seeds, and my 15-year-old brain was too stupid to get through some of the shrines. So after getting all the armor upgrades I still had left, equipping myself with all I got, I did it. I beat the game. It was a phenomenal spectacle and a worthy end to this fantastic game. I felt that same feeling again that I had when I beat Donkey Kong Country Returns, the first jump and run and real game I ever played in my life. I set down the controller, watched the last cutscene, and smiled. But while the credits rolled, my smile started to fade away. My head sank a little, and the one big, crushing thought that I had so carefully pushed down this last month now emerged in its full glory. What the fuck now?
You gotta understand, I wasn't used to games like this. I was used to like Smash Bros, jump and runs, or maybe some real-time strategy like Age of Mythology. A big 3D game with incredible environmental storytelling and the feeling of a huge journey with multiple side quests, all in such a perfectly designed world on top of actually challenging and difficult gameplay and bosses? At least for me, at that time, I was blown away. And now that it was over, I just felt so empty. What do I even do now? Like, go outside? The outside world will never be as interesting as this. Play it again? Well, I tried that and it just wasn't the same. It didn't hit me with that feeling I was searching for. So I stopped. I tried everything. I tried playing some games on my old Wii again, didn't work. I played Super Mario Odyssey, which was really fun and at least managed to distract me from my gaming fatigue, but it didn't last. And it came to the point where I was even considering giving up gaming altogether. Maybe I've just grown out of it. But then I saw this weird video. It was from a YouTuber who I really liked at that point, who talked with two other guys about some games they feel ashamed of never having played because everyone says they're the greatest games ever. And there, for the first time in my life, I heard these two words that would soon catapult me out of my gaming fatigue right into gaming addiction.
Aber tatsächlich gehöre ich zu den Leuten, die in ihrem Leben noch nie die Spiele, die als sehr gut gelten, der Reihe namens Souls gespielt haben. Ich habe weder Demon's Souls, Dark Souls noch Bloodborne gespielt.
I don't know why, but something about the music, the gameplay in the background, and the way they described the game hooked me. I watched this video multiple times just to hear them talk about it again. When this dude finally started to play it and I was able to watch him go from hating the game and never wanting to play it again
Willst du mich verarschen?
to making tutorial videos, playing through the whole series and even making a new video whose title directly translates to "All games are crap except Dark Souls," when I saw all that, I knew this was my last attempt at gaming. I had to play this game. And lucky me, without a PC, Dark Souls Remastered was announced for the Nintendo Switch. On the exact day of my 16th birthday, I went to my local GameStop and bought Dark Souls 1. And let me tell you, the 140 hours I popped into BOTV, it got nothing on what I would soon have on every single game of the Souls series. Except for Dark Souls 2.
Dark Souls 2 is fine. I'm really not a hater or anything. I just made really bad weapon choice and then really bad stat choices because, you know, the stats in Dark Souls 2 are kinda stupid. So I ruined my first run with it. My second run with Scholar of the First Sin Edition on PC was way more pleasant because I used the unbeatable strategy of poke with poke sticky poke. The rapier is a really good weapon in Dark Souls 2. Oh, and I never really played Demon Souls 2 since I only got the Japanese version here for some reason, and I don't have a PS5 to play the remake on, so, yeah, that's that.
But back to Dark Souls. This game, man, I was not ready. I played this on the easiest difficulty you could have as a new player. I watched a video about how to get the best beginner weapons, immediately ran to the Black Knight, got super lucky and pushed him off the cliffs, and... yeah. I got the Black Knight halberd in my first ever Souls run. For those who don't know, this is considered to be one of, if not the best weapon in the game, if you count early game placement as a factor. And to be completely sure, I even ran through the catacombs to get the Gravelord sword, another one of the strongest weapons in the game. Yes, I was a fucking noob, kill me for it! But even with all those buffs and watching guides on how the humanity system works and how to summon NPCs to help me with boss fights, this was up to that point the absolute hardest thing I ever did.
That's what she said!
But I just couldn't get enough of it. It took me 60 hours to get through it all, including the DLC, but it just wasn't enough. I needed more. I was addicted. This game was my life. When I wasn't playing it, I was watching lore videos about it, and when I wasn't doing that, I was thinking about it. I started a second run and went with a dex build and a Nuchi Katana and promised myself not to use any summons this time around. And because I was now playing normally, even the second run felt hard. Not as hard as the first run, of course, but the bosses were still fucking difficult. This world sucked me up. It did everything it could have done to me. There was no emotion not felt during my time with the game. I was shocked when the Asylum Demon kicked my ass the first time before I got a weapon. I felt so relieved when I found the first bonfire in the Undead Burg. I was frustrated at the Taurus Demon because he felt like such an unbreakable wall. And I got that Dark Souls rush when I finally did beat him. Then I was mesmerized by the beauty of the Moonlight Butterfly and its music. And then I felt like I wanted to throw my fucking controller away when I got cursed by these fucking frogs in the depths! I got sad when I found Solaire going hollow, scared by the Gaping Dragon, angry at the Capra Demon, lost and isolated in Blighttown, betrayed by Patches.
Were you poisoned?
Yes!
Cursed?
Yes!
Kidnapped or enslaved?
Yes!
Do animals talk to you?
Yes!
Thine kinsmen are betrayed.
Do people assume all your problems got solved because a big strong man showed up?
Yes!
She is a princess!
And for a few months, this was it. This was the game. The game I have been searching for so long. The experience that brought that fire I once felt for video games back. The experience of true art in this medium. But even in my first playthrough, there were some moments that disturbed my experience. Moments that made me feel something I hoped this experience would just not have. Something I didn't expect to find in this game. Boredom. And also unfairness. Wait! Stop. It's not your turn yet. Don't worry. We'll get to you later.
When this first rush of Dark Souls 1 was over, I finally got a PC and was then able to try out some of From Software's other catalog. And these games, together with roguelikes, AOM, and some very few Nintendo games and some very few hack and slash games, have pretty much been the only thing I've been playing for these last 5 years. I'm currently doing a Guts roleplay in Dark Souls 3, and I also just finished the last boss in the Elden Ring DLC. I'm still playing Sekiro now and then, and even installed the Resurrections mod to make the game even harder for me, which I will fucking finish. Someday. And after I'm done with that, I will do my second playthrough of Bloodborne, even though it runs on like 20 FPS with the old ass PS4 I have. These games are all I love about gaming. Every part of them. The story is incredible and also incredibly told through its environmental storytelling. The bosses are fun to learn and require very precise timing to master, at least if you're always running a dex build like me, cause strength weapons and magic are fucking broken in these games. The gameplay is fun, the atmosphere is incredible, and the areas are nearly perfectly designed. And even the music, when played every now and then, is fantastic. However, when I look back at the Souls series now, all the things I love about it are either non-existent or significantly weaker in Dark Souls 1. When I think about the fun I had with the Souls series, Dark Souls 1 definitely pops into my mind. But when I look at the fun I could have right now with a Souls game, I don't even think about opening up Dark Souls 1 again. My last run, I went with my favorite build. A good old-fashioned Great Scythe dex run. And it was the most boring 4 hours I ever had. And I hear you say, what? You beat the whole game in 4 hours? No, I didn't. I quit after defeating Ornstein and Smough because after this, I knew that boredom I felt would soon be turned up to 11 and mixed with an unbearable frustration to top it off. Returning back to DS3, some areas made me feel that way too, but never to that degree, and even then, I still loved fighting all the bosses. Sekiro's only flaw lies within how short it is. Bloodborne, while being the worst in terms of its camera, especially in the bosses, is also the one with the coolest style and healing system, and Elden Ring is way too massive to lack enjoyable areas. Also, it's just so incredibly beautiful. Look at it. Dark Souls 1, however, has nothing that makes me want to play it again. And the more I did, searching for that fun I once had, its flaws just became more and more obvious. I just don't like Dark Souls 1 anymore. So let's talk about how I came to that conclusion, shall we? Part 1. Story and Atmosphere. Yes, all of this was just the intro. This is what the game does most solid, in my opinion. The introductory cutscene is beautiful and sets up the world pretty well, and also your position in it. You're fucking nothing. You're a lonely, pathetic undead in a lonely and cruel world who is trying to fulfill a prophecy that is just going to result in this lonely and cruel world staying as it is. The whole story actually has a very progressive and leftist message if you think about it. A conservative German politician once said, "To be conservative does not mean that you preserve the ashes, but that you guard the flame." How ironic it is that the problem of the world of Dark Souls 1 is that the flame of the old world is dying out. Trying to preserve it by relinking it has led to the people suffering immensely, turning them into violent beings constantly fighting each other. And all that because its leader was too afraid of the other, of the new things that lieth behind the Age of Fire. Afraid of gazing into the abyss and accepting it as part of yourself and the world you live in. Because even though it might seem scary and you will face a lot of monsters you may not want to face, it is ultimately where you will find your own humanity. It's a powerful story, and the game has some really strong moments that will last with you.
The fact that nearly no boss and no enemy is just here to be an obstacle in your way is brilliant. They all have a reason to be here. The undead walking around in the burg? Well, they are what happens to people like you when they don't complete their task. They go hollow and lose their mind, attacking every living thing. Quelaag, the boss in Blighttown, is just there to gather humanity for her weakened sister. And her brother is guarding the remains of another sister right behind her. Pinwheel is pretty much just a foot soldier who lost his wife and kid, proceeded to challenge the Lord of Death, stole a valuable artifact from him, and now merged his own existence with that of his wife and kid, therefore bringing them kinda back to life, and is now ruling over the catacombs, never daring to go to the Tomb of Giants again. Priscilla is just the result of a horrible experiment done by an ancient dragon who is scared of his own mortality. He kidnapped tons of maidens to perform a ritual on them, and then accidentally created a dragon-human hybrid whom he was so scared of reproducing that he banished her and locked her up in a completely different world to our own. She is not even hostile to you. You have to go out of your way to kill her. The game has some very strong moments story-wise, especially when you find out in the end that even the leader of this conservative regime, the guy who so desperately tried to relink and guard the flame and to preserve this dying age of fire, has gone mad while doing so. And here you are, repeating the same mistake he did again, trying to preserve a fire that has long gone out. But the game is not perfect in that regard. Some of the encounters are pretty random. The Capra and the Taurus demon, for example, are just demons who went up from Izalith because they got bored or something. How'd they get up there? I have no idea. The Iron Golem is just kind of a living armor set placed on top of Sen's Fortress by the gods as a challenge for you, the chosen undead. Or to say it otherwise, it's a boss placed there because we needed a boss there. The Hellkite Wyvern, or Drake, is there. Why? I don't know why, but he's there. The Demon Fire Sage is also just there, and also a reused boss. I don't want to go too deeply into the second half of the game and its stupid, nonsensical enemy placement now, but let's just say I could have made this list a lot longer. But apart from that, and some very minor nitpicks, I love the story and world of Dark Souls 1. For me, it's definitely the strongest aspect of the game. I just think that Dark Souls 3 did it a lot better in every single way possible, so let's talk about that now, shall we? Dark Souls 3 is set many thousand years after DS1. The cycle of the first flame fading out and being relinked has been played out so many times now that the world itself, not only its population, has been deformed by it. Graveyards have been made and reused and made again so often that they stop to resemble any sort of structure. Izalith and the Ash Lake from Dark Souls 1 have merged together, and once tiny parasitic creatures have morphed into these big, nearly unstoppable worms. Unstoppable, of course, unless you know the complex strategy of standing right here and not moving. The once so numerous demons? Well, a sad old demon king, a wandering stray demon, and 2 last Taurus demons who've already been burnt to a crisp is all what's left from them. The whole world is messy and dead. Its structure no longer makes any sense. This world screams at you that this mission you've been set out on to relink the flame, to keep this age going, is maybe not the right choice. It's a dying world forced to still remain, begging you not to make it suffer any longer. You don't need to look up any lore videos or item descriptions for this. Even though there definitely is a lot to be found in its lore, Dark Souls 3 lives and breathes through its environmental storytelling more than any other game From Software's catalog. And coming back from Dark Souls 3, with its dark and cruel and messy and broken world, and with its message that even in a place as broken as this, you can still find hope. You can still move on, you can still see or imagine a better future, you can still see tiny flames dancing somewhere, someday, coming back from all that to the world of Dark Souls 1, I just kind of felt useless. Story and feeling wise, Dark Souls 1 is more of a survival game. The NPCs tell you how you please shouldn't go hollow, how you should still fight, keep up hope and keep going on through your journey, but all that, for me at least, gets kinda defeated by its lackluster ending. In the canon ending, you just relink the flame and keep the age going. That's it. No second thoughts over if this is really the right choice, no hatred towards Gwyn for dooming all of humanity with his relinked Age of Fire, even though this is literally what caused the curse of the undead. In Dark Souls 3, the relinking is not only the saddest ending, but it also feels the most incomplete of them all. You just sit there and ask yourself, all that for this? This little flame is supposed to keep this age going? And what an age it is, marked by so much terror and madness. Was I really supposed to do this? Am I not just delaying the inevitable for a few more years? And then someone else will probably come around just to make the same mistakes again. But Dark Souls 3 doesn't trap you in this feeling. You can blow the flame out and start a new age. You can even try to give all the people damned by this current age a new purpose and become the Lord of Hollows. Even though the world of Dark Souls 3 is way crueler and way more dark and messy, it's also way more hopeful than that of Dark Souls 1. DS1's ending stands in contrast to all you've been doing. The relinking of the first flame, the delaying of the inevitable, the choice to stay subservient to the Age of Gods who never respected your humanity, this choice is celebrated with a huge fire. A nearly glorifying depiction of what you did. And after the ending, you can't even sit with the choice you made for a little while like in Dark Souls 2, as H. Bomber Guy pointed out.
But instead of resetting the game, it just carries on. You're put back in the world. The game deliberately undercuts its story. You win, but what do you win? Kingship over a dying world? The chance to sit in a chair?
You just start the game new, repeating the cycle over and over again.
Yes, indeed.
And the fact that people aren't bothered more by this very nihilistic and hopeless message is mind-boggling to me. Spoiler warnings for the end of Attack on Titan here. If you don't want to see it, skip to this time frame. The ending of Dark Souls 1 always left me with an uncompleted and unsatisfied feeling, but I could never really put my finger onto why. And now that I watched the last episode of Attack on Titan, I know why. Because it ends the exact same way and I hate it. The evil Titan power is sealed away, our remaining characters mourn over their lost fascist boy, and well, someday someone will reawaken the Titan and all the violence we have just witnessed over the course of the show will be repeated again and again in an endless cycle never to be stopped. The most positive reading you can get out of this is, look at how bad violence in war is. Isn't it tragic? All your favorite characters had to die, and all this violence and all this war, and genocide. Isn't that sad? But oh well, history will just repeat itself. So LOL. What can you do? I guess. But there is an alternative ending, the one where you become the Dark Lord. Yes, that is true, but first of all, I don't really like the idea of an authoritarian system getting replaced by another authoritarian system. That's why I don't really like the Age of Hollows ending in Dark Souls 3, and why the Age of Stars is the only ending I accept in Elden Ring. And secondly, this ending is tied to one of the most difficult to get quest lines of the whole game. Seriously, who of us will even know that there is a second snake in our first or even second playthrough? I didn't, and I was playing this game with guys. Yes, the questline design of Dark Souls games has always been horrible, but at least the trigger for the quests, the thing making you aware of its existence, was normally relatively easy to find. Just talk to a random NPC. And lastly, the ending is not canon, so fuck you. The lore of Dark Souls 1 is wonderful. The world is wonderful. But Dark Souls 3 just does it better. And also, it doesn't leave me with this feeling of emptiness. Dark Souls 1, however, does exactly that. And sadly, it does that not only through its ending.
Part 2. The level design. This is another one where the game initially does really well. The interconnectivity of the first third or half of the game is just as good as everyone says it is. I do remember finding that elevator from the church back to Firelink Shrine. I do remember this oh my god feeling I got when I discovered the lift up out of Blighttown to the Firelink Shrine. Oh, and by the way, you don't even need the master key to take this shortcut. Like, you can just find this entrance when exploring the Darkwood Garden. You just have to run through these very strong enemies, which is something the game taught you earlier not to do. Perfect game design works like schools should work. It teaches you a thing and then performs a test on you to see if you learned that thing. Dark Souls does this to perfection. Oh hey, you can jump down on bosses to perform a plunging attack. Now here's a boss where you can do that again, but you have to come up with it yourself. Oh hey, this boss is way too difficult for you now. Maybe you should go somewhere else first. Got it? Good, let's test that. Hey you, if you walk fast enough, you can outrun arrows that are being shot at you. Got it? Okay, let's test that later. Dark Souls demands from you what you are freely giving to me right now as you're watching this video. Your attention. That is, if you're actually paying attention and not just have this on as background noise while you, I don't know, do other things like slicing up that corpse I left in your basement. It's your mom, by the way. If you really pay attention to the game, it will not be that difficult for you. Yes, I'm saying this right now, Dark Souls 1 is not that difficult of a game. It's just a demanding game. It demands something from you, and if you're not willing to give it to it, it will not give anything back to you. That being said, it's not very consistent with this philosophy. What is humanity and how do you use it? Well, the only way the game teaches you that is by trying to click a few options on the bonfire menu and hoping you get it right. The Crestfallen Warrior tells you that humanity exists and that you can get it, but not how to use it. The stat system is just absolutely horrible. The menu design of Dark Souls games is bad consistently throughout all the games. How the fuck should I know which of these stats is important as a first player without any guides? It's confusing as fuck and it's also never really explained. Also, you need to be in your human form to summon NPCs for your boss battles. But being in human form is actively punishing since it opens you up for invasions, forcing you to participate in an otherwise completely optional aspect of the game. And yes, you can just go offline mode, but that, for me, defeats the whole community aspect of the game. You are not alone in this world. There are other undead, other players helping you, making stupid jokes, laughing at each other. It's what makes this interconnected and real-feeling world of Dark Souls 1 just all the more enjoyable. We are all going through this together. Then there is the blocking off certain areas problem. Once you get an item called the Lord Vessel, and once you place it at the altar in Firelink Shrine, you get access to 3 more areas that were previously blocked by these yellow glowing walls. Only problem is, these walls are placed very stupidly. There is a very clear path after the Quelaag fight that leads you to Lost Izalith. Why not set the wall here? Why set it here? Way down where you already reached another bonfire. And don't tell me, oh, but the game just tells you shouldn't be here through the placements of the Taurus and Capra demons. Those are hard enemies you're not supposed to fight yet. That's what you learned earlier with the Asylum demon and the skeletons at the graveyard. No it doesn't. You already fought those guys and won. You should feel pretty equipped to deal with them. The Tomb of the Giants is even worse in that regard. Why is the yellow wall here? This is one of the worst areas in the game, and if you go in there before you can warp, you have to backtrack through this whole thing and the catacombs again. That is, if you can even find the path back, which will be one hell of a task since the level is so fucking dark. Oh, and while we're talking about backtracking, the bonfire closest to the demon ruins you can warp to is that of Quelaag's sister, which is locked behind an illusory wall. So if you didn't find it the first time,
Have fun backtracking from Firelink Shrine all the way to Blighttown again. Also, people like Anor Londo for some reason. And yeah, I agree, fighting the Silver Knights is pretty fun. If you can actually roll, which you can't if you're fighting this guy. People who can't parry are fucking dead here. Also, I know that this is super subjective, but I hate this part of Anor Londo. It's a part that basically tells you to hide behind your shields, which is the most boring way to play. And also, you have to fight two of the worst enemies of the entire series in their most bullshit form. Camera and Gravity. I hate these motherfuckers. But apart from that, the world and the game in its first half is incredibly designed. Only that once you get this design, it becomes so easy that it's actively boring. Part 3. Difficulty and bad bosses. Every area of this game can be run through super easily. Most of the enemies just look at you and then you're already gone. The tracking of your position in the game from the enemy's AI is laughably bad. You don't need to engage with them at all. You can just walk around them and backstab again. Take out the backstabs, and the same thing applies to bosses. Because most of their attacks are 1 or maybe 2 hit combos and they don't really track your positioning, all the bosses that don't have some unfair bullshit in them like the Capra Demon are a fucking joke. I never died to the Taurus Demon after my first playthrough. Quilak's sword can't hit you at all if you just stay close to her, meaning the fight is reduced to walking towards her, spamming R1, and then sometimes run away when she does the explosion attack. The gargoyles are a pretty cool fight, but also get completely trivialized by just not locking on and walking around them. Same with the Gaping Dragon, same with the Asylum Demons and the Reskin, same with the Iron Golem. And then of course there are the bullshit bosses. These are the bosses that are sometimes, hard, yes, but not through their clever design, but through some bullshit aspect that just makes them annoying to deal with. Not necessarily unfair, just annoying. The Capra Demon would probably be one of my favorite fights if it weren't for the small-ass arena you fight him in, and also the fucking dogs. Everyone hates this boss, and it's for good reason. The Ceaseless Discharge... yeah, it's a fucking joke. And beating him regularly is just... nah. Gwendolyn is a walking simulator. Pinwheel is a joke. The Four Kings are a test of your poise more than anything else. The Moonlight Butterfly is... honestly, I always summon the NPC for it, not because it's overly difficult, but just because it drags on forever. Nito is a gank boss with unavoidable damage at the beginning and an attack he can do without you being able to see the windup, making it technically dodgeable, but you won't see it coming, so you probably won't dodge it. And because you didn't see the wind-up animation for it the first time, you'll probably not know it when he does it a second time, meaning you will most likely get hit by it again. Gwyn is, depending on how you fight him, either a boss that feels like it's made for Dark Souls 3 or a lackluster finale and comically easy. The Centipede Demon's area is way too small. I have no idea what's going on there once he is close to me, and he takes forever till he actually gets close to you so that you can start attacking. I think what they tried to do with this boss was to make you dodge his long-range attacks he does at the beginning so that you can cut his arm off, giving you the ring that lets you walk on lava so that you can fight him properly. Problem is, guy's too fast. Most of the time that doesn't work. Maybe you were supposed to walk over this small edge so that you can fight him in this bigger part of the arena, but... yeah, most of the time that also doesn't work. Priscilla and Sif, I have nothing negative to say about, and these are my favorite bosses in the entire game. Especially Sif is just... no notes. Perfect.
Better fucking chaos!
Yeah, fuck this. I'm not even gonna pretend I have anything to say about this boss that hasn't already been said 100 times. It's not only the worst boss of the entire series, but one of the worst bosses in the entire gaming history. And then there is Ornstein and Smough.
One of the most beloved fights in the game, if not the entire series. And I'm really sorry to say this, I try to love them, but I don't. People praise this boss for its clever design, one quick and fast, and one slow but hard hitting. Also, the area you fight them in gives you a lot of ways to separate them, making it possible for you to focus on just one. At least, in theory. In praxis, however, Smo is not slow! His normal walking speed is not that much slower than Ornstein's, and also he has a running attack, which he just spams whenever you manage to separate them. Ornstein is fast. Pretty fast. So fast, in fact, that when his fastest attack gets blocked off by the pillars, he basically teleports to you. With this really awkward looking animation. This is the attack you're meant to hope and pray for, so that you even get a chance to deal with him before Smo arrives. But most of the time, he jumps away immediately after, so that you don't have a chance of attacking him right away before he does another attack, which you then have to dodge and then punish him for it and just pray to God that Smo didn't do his running attack in the meantime, because if he did, all your work was for fucking nothing. Fighting these two both at once is not the way to go, that's practically impossible. You have to separate them. But the area does not really help you with that. In fact, it hinders you sometimes from doing so, since Ornstein, the guy you want to fight first, can get stuck behind those pillars too. Whenever I fight these two, it comes down to running away, hoping for Ornstein to jump towards me, praying that I can get a punish in time, and then repeating that process again. It's a running simulator, most of the time. Smo or Ornstein on their own in the second phase are good fights, I like them a lot. But that first phase just never clicked with me and I often just summon Solaire, which sadly actually makes it a lot more fun, since now you can just focus on one of the two in the first phase while Solaire takes care of the other. This makes this basically one boss with two phases and two completely different movesets in each phase, which are both very fun to play. Hot take, summoning NPCs should never make a boss design for a single player experience more fun. It should always take away from it. It should always leave you with the feeling of, I want to do this alone. This boss never does. Now, the DLC is the best part of this game boss-wise, and I have nothing bad to say about it. Artorias is great. Manus is great. I don't fight Calamite often, but he's good too, and I even like the Sanctuary Guardian. With all what I have just said, my personal boss tier list, without DLC, looks like this. And with the DLC, it looks like this. And just for comparison, the tier list for Dark Souls 3 looks like this. You know, the Dark Souls 1 tier list doesn't even have an S+ rank. I don't think Dark Souls 1 overall has good bosses. Now, you are free to disagree with me on that, but speaking from my own personal point of view in 2024 or 2025, depending on when that video comes out, Dark Souls 1's bosses are mediocre overall, with many exceptions which are horrible and some which are pretty good. And for a game that is so universally praised, especially for its boss design, for a game that is regarded as the ultimate game of all time, I just don't get it. And we haven't even really, talked about the big elephant in the room. The thing you probably thought would take most of this video's runtime. The thing everyone complains about when they complain about Dark Souls 1. The second half. Part 4. The entire second half of the game. Okay. Let's start with the mediocre first, before we dive into the abyss. The Duke's Archives. The Duke's Archives is the best area in the second half of Dark Souls, meaning it's mediocre compared to Blighttown, the Undead Burg and Sans Fortress, but hey, at least it's not terrible. It starts off with an enemy spam that would make Dark Souls 2 jealous, only that these enemies also constantly shoot at you, Earlier you learned that you can outrun arrows being shot at you. The game teaches you this 2 times, making you think that it should be a viable strategy here. Problem is that this whole first library room is like this, meaning that the game asks you either to run through a completely new and unexplored area to outrun the arrows, which is contradictory to the game's earlier rewarding of exploration, or it tells you that what you previously learned does not apply here since you can't attack enemies while running. The game wants you to fight the enemies and to explore the area slowly, like you did with all the areas before. But it also wants you to think of resolutions on how to do that with the arrow spam on your own. That would be okay if the game actually gave you some other fun way of dealing with this arrow spam. But as far as I can tell, the only other ways are using a shield or luring out the enemies into this little space here while not attracting any aggression from the blue golems so that you can fight them one-on-one. Which is fucking boring. Once again, it encourages passivity, making you hide behind a wall or a shield. And also, it does not have this holy shit there are so many enemies, adrenaline, like the room right before the gargoyle fight, which it is clearly mirroring here. It's just a weaker version of what we already had. I'm not overwhelmed by a powerful enemy or army. I'm annoyed at an enemy spam. The rest of the archives are better, especially the prison room and the moving stairs section, since here you're not in the middle of a room getting shot at from every corner, but you actually can outrun arrows like before and deal with the shooters. After that, however, you arrive at the most nothing area of Dark Souls. The Crystal Cave is a cave made of crystals. And yes, they put about as much effort into the area as they put into the name. The Crystal Caves is just a super long boss run-up with almost no noticeable encounters except for, I guess, these seashell guys since they dropped Twinkling Titanite. And hey, the Moonlight Butterfly is here! Yay! Yay! Why does this area exist? I guess the design is a little cool, but apart from that, this is just boring. Oh, and wouldn't you know it, there's also no bonfire in here, meaning you have to run all the way from the Duke's archives down to Seth. According to Mason Blue on Reddit, this walk takes over 2 minutes on a light equipment mode with 30 endurance. Many people like to defend long boss run-ups with, oh, you must see them as part of the bosses themselves. They are just an extra challenge you must overcome every time as part of the boss's experience. Oh, really? Well, I guess if we're counting boss run-ups as part of the bosses themselves, suddenly my tier list doesn't look like this, but this. It's gotten worse. Long boss run-ups with no challenge in between are not fun. They are not clever designed. They are not challenging. They're just a big waste of time. Especially with a boss that can one-shot you. Seth the Scaleless is run towards him, hit him a few times, run away, and repeat till he's dead. But watch out, you could get cursed by him, which is just such a good mechanic. Yeah, and that's the Duke's Archives. An area with ups and downs, more downs than ups, but hey, at least there are ups. The next area has less of them. New Londo. New Londo is interesting, since it is an area you can theoretically explore right at the beginning, even though it's not recommended and you need 20,000 souls to even fight the boss, and where the hell would you get those from? It's also an area I don't have that many feelings on. The first part before you open the dam is okay, I guess, but the design is a bit lackluster. Like, the area is just ugly, I don't know what to say to you. Also, it's super linear, even more linear than many Dark Souls 3 areas. Nowadays, I just always use the bow skip, which is when you shoot arrows at this guy who has the key from this little bridge here, and then boom, you got the key. I like that the game allows me to do that, since then I don't have to deal with even more of these stupid ghosts. And yes, I don't think fighting the ghosts is fun. They can attack you from inside a wall or in the ground, not only when they are deliberately placed there as traps, but also just regularly. Well, then just lure them out. How? The area is a bunch of narrow paths with walls. There's no room to go back. And there's also no real room to roll, meaning the most effective strategy, again, is to just use a shield. I should say that the ghosts being able to follow you through walls and even when there's no ground is a great solution to the problem that you can normally just outrun the regular enemies. Here you can't, cause where the heck would you run? They'll follow you everywhere. And yes, I would praise that if the area is actually one I would enjoy going through. If these enemies were in the Undead Burg, it would be perfect, but in this area, an area that looks so dull and is so boring to go through, I wish I could just run past everything because I actively want this to be over. Linearity is great if the linear path is actually well designed. After you open the floodgates, it gets better, but only for a very short time since the area is so short. The Dark Wraiths are one of, if not the most fun enemy to fight in the game. I like their design, I like the moveset, but after fighting a few of them, the area is basically over. The Four Kings are okay. I don't hate them, I don't like them. I'm sorry, I don't have much to say about them. I never fight them regularly, I always use Havel's armor. And yeah, that's New Londo. Boring most of the times, annoying some of the times, and good at the end for a little bit. 4 out of 10 for me, where the Duke's Archives were like a 6 out of 10. So yeah, just below average. Oh man, so far the second half has been pretty lackluster. I hope it gets better with the remaining 2 areas. It'll get better, right? It'll get better, right? The Catacombs and the Tomb of the Giants. Let's start with the things I don't hate.
But I gotta be honest, there's not much here.
The Catacombs could have been one of the best areas in the entire game. For real, I really love how this place looks and also how it feels. I even like the skeletons and how you can only truly kill them once you kill their leader. This is also the only area in the game which I would say stays consistently difficult without being unfair. Until you get to this part, that is. Yeah, fuck this. The negatives with this area are, firstly, maybe there are a few too many skeletons and their leaders are sometimes a bit too well hidden, and secondly, and this is the big one, you can skip most of the area by jumping down, or falling down, or crashing through the ground, like a slasher movie hound in a wrecked and dubious town where death makes its beautiful sound. And this is a problem because there are so many of these moments where you either can or have to jump off to progress. I never really know which of those paths I'm now supposed to follow, which makes the progression feel very messy. The high amount of respawning enemies pressures you to make decisions quickly, since you don't really get a moment to breathe. But there are so many different cliffs to jump from, ladders to climb, and paths to explore that you just end up skipping a big amount of this area. This design works really well for the feeling of the place. It gives this all a messy, adventurous kind of Tomb Raider-like spirit, where around every corner there could be something new and dangerous waiting, but for the actual gameplay, I think it's bad. That's what I meant earlier when I said linearity is great if that linear path is actually well designed. New Londo was linear, but not well designed. The Catacombs are well designed for a linear experience, but they are not linear. I think it would have been really cool to explore all these paths and their secrets and then being able to go back to the main route to progress. But with hiding lots of these paths behind fall off this cliff or randomly break through this floor, it makes this area one of the unintendedly potentially shortest areas in the game. Also, it fucks with my already bad sense of orientation. So the Catacombs are good, but they had the potential to be great, and aren't, which is kinda sad. Anyways, we climb up the ladder after Pinwheel's fight, we talk to Patches, and... And this marks the moment where the game completely falls apart. Before I start, I know that the developers were rushed. I know that they didn't have any time to finish these last parts of the game. But that doesn't change the fact that they are what they are,
and that they didn't change it in the slightest in the remastered version, which I, by the way, am not playing in the footage you're seeing. I'm playing the original. No matter the circumstances of how we got here, now we're here, and this is what we got. So what do we got? The Tomb of the Giants is horrible. In any way possible. The place looks ugly and samey all the way through, the enemies are not fun to fight and are just skeletons, but bigger. I was so hoping to see actual giants there, actual big guys who would fight slower but would hit harder or something. I was hoping to see the ruins of this old civilization, like, guys, giants that worship the Lord of Death. That's such a cool concept! I even think the gimmick that the place is dark could have worked if there were little ritual fires that you would have to light up like in Dark Souls 3 to bring light back to the place. Maybe the giants could have a weakness against light, meaning that they wouldn't attack you if you held up a skull lantern. Or maybe they would attack you, but they would take damage from it. There are many things you could have done with this concept, but no. We got a dark place with uninteresting enemies and paths that are not fun to explore. Stick to the right wall and just run through so that this can be over as soon as possible. There's not a single thing I look forward to when leaving the catacombs, and that includes Nito. I have already talked about him briefly, but to reiterate, you take damage at the beginning, no matter what you do, you will most likely take damage again due to the stupid incantation he can do. Oh, and if you try to run towards him at the beginning, you will trigger an enemy gank that is worse than anything the critics of Dark Souls 2 could ever dream of. This boss would have been so much more enjoyable if you just fought him alone and without the fall damage at the beginning, but no, more skeletons, because we haven't seen enough of them already. The Tomb of the Giants is ugly, it's annoying, it's boring, it has a bad boss at the end, it's all of that at the same time. Fuck this area. But you wanna know what? It's not even the worst in the game. Let's finally talk about Izalith. The Demon Ruins and Lost Izalith. Whenever I go to Izalith, I feel this deep disappointment and longing for what could have been. Seeing this place in its unfinished state makes me more sad than anything we've talked about so far. It is the place with, in my opinion, the most interesting lore out of all the places. A witch that wanted to create her own flame because she was scared as she saw the old one dying, but who underestimated the forces she was experimenting with, causing her to kill many of her daughters, mutating 2 into demonic spider creatures, and turning her only son into this grotesque, melted demon who is forced to guard the grave of his sister for eternity, all while standing in a pool of lava, burning and in pain forever. She created a flame of chaos, so powerful that out of it a whole new race of beings was born. The demons, who was so powerful that the old king, Gwyn, feared their existence. He led a war against Izalith, destroying it in the process and enslaving the demon race. A powerful story of how unrestrained fear will corrupt the mind and how the chaos following out of the actions we take to avoid that very thing we fear can eventually destroy everything in its path, leading us to a fate far worse than anything we initially feared. I love the lore of Izalith, and the fact that this wonderful piece of lore is attached to the worst and most unfinished area in the entire game, it just makes me sad. The Demon Ruins look like someone created a blueprint for a world, placed the enemies they wanted in it in random locations, started to work on all the things they would add, all the places the enemies would be, and before they had a chance to implement them, the boss came in with the message, "Game comes out tomorrow, hope you're all done, if not just leave it like that." The enemies are just there. No reason as to why, no explanation of what they're doing in this wide area, they just stand there awkwardly, not even moving around. They could be T-posing there for all I care. Initially I was happy, I finally get to fight the Capra Demon solo, what I always wanted. And then again and again and again and again, the Stone Demons are a fucking pushover. The Rockworms are annoying as fuck to deal with, and the boss is a reskinned asylum stray demon who has no fucking reason to be here. The game would be better off without him here. After this boss, there is a long walk with no enemy encounters in it to the next boss, whom I've already talked about. It's bad. The Demon Ruins takes you out of the illusion Dark Souls 1 is so meticulous at crafting. The feeling of a real place. The feeling that this deep lore you can read about in item descriptions actually took place in exactly this world as you see it. Because it didn't. The Demon Ruins looks exactly like what they are. An unfinished delta state of an area that could have been so much more. And once you reach Lost Izalith, all of it just gets even worse. The brightness of this lava gives me eye cancer. The enemies are, again, just randomly placed around the edges of the room, which only serves the purpose of you never going out to explore because my God, are these guys annoying to fight. The path is just a linear route filled with nothing. The bonfire is hidden behind an illusory wall. You get ganked at by stone demons. These chaos eater aliens break your armor. The walk up to Solaire is too long and has the strongest Titanite demon in the game there to fight on a very small bridge, who is coincidentally also the only Titanite demon who respawns. Meaning if you lose to Solaire, you have to go through him again and... And to top all this bullshit we just witnessed, at the end of this piece of garbage of an area awaits us the bed of fucking chaos. Some might say, yeah, it is a bad boss, but I at least appreciate that they tried to do something different. I don't appreciate what they tried to do here. Dark Souls is not a platformer, and its jumping, especially in the original where you had to jump with the same button you roll and run with, feels weird to use through and through. With Elden Ring's jumping mechanic, maybe this boss would have been okay, but even then it's still a one-hit KO, which you sometimes can't even dodge. It's literally jump and pray that the boss doesn't do a sweep attack before you reach his weak point. It is a bad idea for a Dark Souls boss, and this bad idea is horribly implemented. You know how the Dark Souls fanbase nowadays can be super toxic towards new players who came through Elden Ring whenever they use spirit summons for a boss? Well, this boss right here is so bad that the Souls community will not be mad at you if you cheat. When you've hit one of the glowing routes, return to the main menu, reload the game, and you will spawn right before the boss area, but no progress you made in the fight will be lost. Do the same again after the second route, and then just pray that the Bat of Chaos doesn't do its sweep attack while you jump down to the little route in the middle. Say that 3 times in a row. To the little route in the middle, to the little route in the middle. Okay, stop. Yes, you skip a huge part of the boss experience, and thank God you do, because I never want to see this thing again. Just imagine what this fight could have been if you actually fought the Witch of Izalith here. Corrupted by the Chaos Flame, crying out to her daughters for help who you killed before. Maybe she even turned into a demon form herself and doesn't want you to look at her like this. There are so many cool things they could have done with this. This place, this boss could have had the potential to bring me to tears. But instead, it is one of the main reasons why so many Dark Souls 1 players quit their run after defeating Ornstein and Smough. It's just not fun anymore. And as a wise man once said, if it isn't fun, why bother? Part 5. The ultimate game of all time. To celebrate 50 years of gaming, in 2021, the Golden Joystick Awards made the public vote on what they would consider the ultimate game of all time. The game that people would consider the biggest staple of video game history and the best of what gaming has to offer. The public chose Dark Souls 1 for this. Over games like The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time or Super Mario 64, who defined what gaming in 3D would be. Over Minecraft or GTA,
over Tetris, Doom, or Street Fighter 2. And after all I just said, I really have to ask, why? Why is this game considered the ultimate game of all time? A game with a completely unfinished second half, with a badly explained leveling system, areas with nothing to find and little to explore, reskinned bosses, unfair fights, a nihilistic message in its ending, which speaks directly against the uplifting and motivational dialogues you have with NPCs, a game which released with such an unstable framerate on PC originally that you were basically forced to download a mod to even play it properly, a game where you're taught over and over again to engage with its mechanics in the most boring and passive way, a game with so many mediocre to just downright bad bosses, a game whose direct spiritual successes improved upon in nearly every way possible. How is this game the ultimate game of all time? How is this game still considered to be one of, if not the best game in the entire From Software catalog, when we have gems like Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, and fucking Sekiro to compare it to? I get it. The first time you play this, it feels amazing, because the things it does right, it does incredible, so that you don't even realize the flaws at first. But with every consecutive playthrough, it gets worse and worse. And no, this is not just due to the flame of the first time dying out, because of course games will get less enjoyable the more you replay them. This is because the more you play it, the more obvious its flaws become and the more harder they get to ignore. I will forever look back at Dark Souls 3 as a game with flaws. Many flaws. But these flaws are never the things ruining my experience when I play it again. The thing ruining my experience with Dark Souls 3 is the fact that I played it so often. Even though I know the moveset of every Sekiro boss by memory and I almost never die to them, I still find fun in fighting them again. Same as I find my fun in replaying a difficult rhythm game level, same as I find my fun in going through the same old Zelda dungeons I played as a kid again. These games will forever give me a reason to pick them up again because they are just good games. Dark Souls 1 is not. I hope to never need to play it again, since for me at least, the only thing the game did best out of all the other From Software games was hiding how bad it actually always was. This is not what I wanted. I wanted to love this game forever, but I can't. The only thing I love it for nowadays is for what it gave to the gaming industry. Only because of this game are the other From Software titles even possible. Only because of Dark Souls we have my favorite game of all time, Hollow Knight. I love everything that you can do with it and its formula. It's an incredible blueprint for so many incredible games, many of which are probably still to come. But a blueprint on its own is just not worth playing for me. I love Dark Souls 1 for what it did. But I just can't bring myself to love it for what it is.